There are moments when the rules of reality seem to slip when science offers no answers, only more questions. A body that turns an emergency room into a toxic disaster. A fire that leaves no bodies behind. A lighthouse whose keepers vanish without a trace. 3 stories, 3 impossible events, 3 mysteries that defy reason. Some might call them coincidences and dismiss them as rare anomalies. But those who were there, those who saw, smelled, and felt the impossible, know better. Some mysteries refuse to be forgotten, some vanishings refuse to stay buried, and some doors once opened never genuinely close. Consider the case of a woman whose very presence turned an ordinary hospital into a nightmare. Gloria Ramirez. February 19, 1994, Riverside General Hospital. The ER bustled with its usual chaos until paramedics rushed in a dying woman, Gloria Ramirez. At 8:15 p.m., her body trembled with shallow breaths, her heartbeat erratic. The medical team moved fast, but then something changed. Her skin shimmered strangely under the fluorescent lights, slick, almost oily. A pungent, garlic-like odor clung to her, thickening the air. A nurse inserted a syringe to draw blood. Then the smell hit. A sharp, ammonia-like stench flooded the room. A doctor recoiled, staring at the blood-filled vial. Suspended inside were strange, pale yellow crystalline structures. Then the screaming began. One nurse gasped, staggering backward before crumpling to the floor. Another gripped a table, her legs buckling beneath her. One by one, ER staff collapsed, racked by nausea, dizziness, and a crushing weakness. Within minutes, 23 hospital workers showed symptoms. One, Dr. Julie Gorchinsky, spent 2 weeks in intensive care, suffering severe respiratory distress and bone necrosis. Yet even as chaos consumed the ER, the doctors fought to save Ramirez. At 8:50 p.m., after 45 minutes of CPR, she was pronounced dead, but her death was only the beginning. Doctors stood in stunned silence as the ER's fluorescent lights flickered overhead. A woman had just died, but the danger wasn't over. Gloria's body was sealed in an airtight isolation bag. A hazmat team arrived, treating the hospital as a biohazard site. No airborne toxins, no known chemicals. There is no logical explanation. How had a human body become toxic? The DMSO theory, a deadly transformation? The leading theory suggests Gloria had been using dimethyl sulfoxide, DMSO, a banned home remedy for pain. Under the right conditions, DMSO can transform into dimethyl sulfate, DMSO2, a highly toxic gas. This could explain why so many collapsed, but the required conditions for DMSO to change inside a hospital room were so rare that they bordered on impossible. The mass hysteria theory, fear turned deadly. Some dismiss the case as mass hysteria, a psychological phenomenon where fear manifests as actual physical symptoms. But hysteria doesn't cause bone necrosis, liver damage, or paralysis. Something poisoned those hospital workers. The government cover-up theory. Some believe Ramirez was unknowingly contaminated with a classified military compound. Her blood reportedly contained abnormally high levels of dimethyl sulfate, a chemical linked to biological warfare. Government agencies allegedly got involved, but what are their findings? It was never made public. Why did Ramirez's blood contain crystalline structures? Why did so many hospital workers suffer long-term illness? Was this a freak chemical reaction or something more disturbing? Science never solved the case, and perhaps the most terrifying mysteries are the ones we may never understand. Some disappear in an instant, others leave behind evidence, ash, charred ruins, the twisted wreckage of what should have been a tragedy. But what if the bodies themselves were missing? What if the fire was only the beginning? Some mysteries leave behind evidence, a trail of anomalies that science struggles to explain. Others leave behind nothing at all. A woman's body turns an emergency room into a disaster zone, yet no definitive cause is ever found. A family home burns to the ground, yet no remains are discovered. A lighthouse stands empty, its keepers vanished as if they were never there. Disappearance takes many forms. Sometimes it's as sudden as a missing person's last breath, gone in an instant like Gloria Ramirez. Other times it is slow and insidious, unfolding in the dead of night while the world sleeps. The Solder children did not vanish into thin air, at least they shouldn't have. There should have been bones in the ashes, something to prove they had once been there. But sometimes, what's missing is more haunting than what remains. Christmas Eve, 1945, a threat in the shadows. Fayetteville, West Virginia. Snow fell softly over the Sodder home, blanketing the quiet streets. Inside, the fireplace crackled, casting flickering shadows on the walls. 5 Sodder children, Maurice, 14, Martha, 12, Louis, 9, Jenny, 8, and Betty, 5, played with their new Christmas gifts. Their parents, George and Jenny, watched them with warmth, unaware it would be the last time they'd see their children laughing in the glow of the Christmas tree. George sat in deep thought. A week earlier, a pushy insurance salesman had visited. His warning still echoed in George's mind.
Your house will go up in smoke and your children will be destroyed.
The reason? Mussolini? George, an outspoken critic of the Italian dictator, had supporters but also enemies.
Coming to bed?
George nodded, shaking off his unease. Tomorrow was Christmas. What could go wrong? Jenny woke with a start. Acrid smoke burned her throat. Flames raged through the house, devouring the staircase. Their eldest sons escaped, but the 5 children upstairs never came out. George ran for the ladder, which he always kept outside. It was gone. He sprinted to his trucks. Both wouldn't start. Jenny screamed for help. A neighbor called the fire department. No one answered. By the time firefighters arrived, the house was gone 7 hours later. But inside the ruins, no bodies, no bones, no ashes. House fires don't burn that way. The Sodders knew something was wrong. Their children hadn't died in that fire. The mafia theory, a political revenge? Did Italian operatives abduct the children as punishment for George's anti-Mussolini stance? The government cover-up theory. Why did the fire chief wait 7 hours to respond? Why were the trucks mysteriously disabled? Why were there no remains? The Sodders never stopped searching. They left their porch light on every night in case their children ever came home. But the truth, that was buried long ago. Maybe in the ashes. Maybe somewhere far beyond them. Or maybe some questions resist answers, slipping further away the closer we get. And the most unsettling part, there are more out there, waiting, unwritten, unanswered, waiting for the next person to ask, what happened? Mysteries have a way of echoing across time. A missing plane that never sends a distress signal, a ship adrift with its crew inexplicably gone, a road where the headlights appear behind you, only to disappear when you glance back. Some call these incidents tragedies, others call them cautionary tales, but in some cases, there's no one left to give a warning. No explanation was left behind. On the Flannan Isles, the lighthouse keepers had a job as steady as the tide itself. Tend the light, keep the logs, and wait for relief. But when that relief arrived, the only thing waiting was silence. This is not a story of drowning or desertion. It is not the tale of men who walked away. It is a mystery so profound, so impossible that over a century later the only answer is the question itself. What happened on the Flannan Isles? December 26, 1900. The lighthouse gone dark. The Hesperus cut through the frigid waters, its hull groaning under the weight of the waves. Captain James Harvey scanned the mist-covered cliffs of the Flannan Isles. 3 lighthouse keepers, Thomas Marshall, James Duckett, and Donald MacArthur, should have been waiting on the shore. But the island was eerily still. There are no figures at the dock, no movement in the windows, no light from the tower.
Go ashore, see what's happened.
Moore's gut twisted as he stepped onto the shore. It wasn't just silence. It was the kind that pressed against his ribs, warning him to turn back. Like the island was holding its breath, he stepped into the rowboat anyway, paddling straight into a mystery that would never be solved. Thomas Marshall, the second assistant keeper, was in his late 40s. A lean, wiry man with a weathered face, he was known for his quiet, steady demeanor. The head keeper, James Duckett, was in his early 50s. He was a stocky, disciplined man who had spent decades working lighthouses. Donald MacArthur, the occasional relief keeper, was the youngest of the trio. Unlike the others, he had a fiery temper. Yet despite their differences, these 3 men had one thing in common. They all vanished. Moore's boots crunched over the frost-covered ground as he climbed the jagged cliffs toward the lighthouse. Then he saw it. The lighthouse door, unlocked. His breath hitched as he pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick, stale. The kitchen table was set for a meal that had never been eaten. The plates sat untouched. The food, moldy and stiff. A chair lay toppled over, its wooden legs splintered against the stone floor. Something had happened. Moore's pulse quickened. He climbed the narrow staircase to the lamp room. The beacon was dark, the oil reserves were full, and on the desk, the logbook lay open. The last entry sent a chill down Moore's spine.
December 12th, 1900. Severe winds, unrelenting, Duckett worried. MacArthur praying. December 13th, 1900. Storm worse. All three of us were afraid. Never seen anything like this before. December 14th, 1900. Still storming. MacArthur crying. December 15th, 1900. Storm ended. Sea calm. God is over all.
There was only one problem. No storms had been recorded during that time. Had they imagined the storm, or did something unnatural descend upon them? Investigators later found scattered clues. The western landing dock was destroyed. The railings had been ripped from their foundation. Ropes lay shredded, whipping violently in the wind. 2 sets of oilskins, protective rain gear, were missing, but one was still inside the lighthouse. 1. The rogue wave theory. Swallowed by the sea? The official explanation claims a massive rogue wave struck the island. The theory goes like this. One keeper was outside securing the ropes when he was swept away, but there were problems. Why had MacArthur been crying in the logbook? 1. Madness and murder. Did one of them go insane? Locals whispered another theory. One of the keepers, perhaps MacArthur, had lost his mind. He killed his colleagues. But if that were true, where was the blood? 1. Something not of this world? The Flannan Isles had long been considered cursed. For centuries fishermen avoided them, claiming they saw strange lights dancing in the mist. Some believed the men had been taken by something ancient. Something watching from the sea. No bodies were ever found, no clues ever surfaced. The Flannan Isles lighthouse was restaffed, but no keeper stayed longer than necessary. Today the lighthouse stands empty, automated, alone. But even now sailors claim that on certain stormy nights, when the wind screams through the cliffs, you can hear whispers, low, desperate voices carried on the wind. The voices of 3 men lost to the sea, or something worse. What truly happened to the lighthouse keepers? Perhaps the sea holds its secrets too tightly, or perhaps some answers were never meant to be known. And the most unsettling part? There are more out there, waiting, unwritten, unanswered, waiting for the next person to ask, what happened? The sea swallows its secrets. The land hides its ghosts. The air carries whispers that only those who listen too closely will ever hear. 3 stories, 3 vanishings, 3 mysteries with no end. Some believe every question has an answer. We will uncover the truth with enough time, investigation, and science. But some riddles do not want to be solved. Some truths exist only in the space between fact and fear. And maybe, just maybe, that's where the absolute horror lies. After all, the missing leaves no footprints, the lost send no goodbyes, and the vanished, they do not always stay gone. But these aren't just stories, they are warnings, echoes, clues. Because one day, the missing person may not be a stranger. One day, it may be you who disappears. Remember, sometimes the abyss stares back. And so the stories continue. It's another house where the lights never go out. Another ship that drifts, empty. Another name whispered in the wind. Because some mysteries don't end, they only wait for the next to disappear.